Dr. Jessica McKenna fought the urge to fidget with her dress uniform's collar as she stood before the Galactic Council's central chamber. The vast hexagonal room stretched nearly a kilometer across, its transparent ceiling offering a view of Centauri Prime's perpetual auroras dancing against the pitch-black sky. Under different circumstances, she might have found the sight beautiful. Today, it only reminded her of how the patterns matched her quantum decay models. Distinguished members of the Council, she began, her voice steady despite the hostile atmosphere. 3 standard months ago, Earth's quantum detection array recorded an anomaly in the Orion Spurfat. A sharp, clicking laugh interrupted her. Councillor Krithk of the Arthropodian Collective raised 3 of his metallic appendages in what humans had learned was a gesture of dismissal. The human expects us to believe their primitive sensors detected something our quantum arrays missed. His translator rendered his clicks into standard with perfect disdain. Jessica took a deep breath, tasting the slightly metallic hint of the council chamber's specialized atmosphere. She tapped her datapad, and the chamber's holographic display filled with a 3-dimensional star map. With respect, Counselor, our primitive sensors didn't miss it because they work differently than yours. We never developed quantum-based detection systems because Earth's isolation forced us to remain backwards, finished Sub-Chancellor Ansel, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns. We are aware of humanity's unique development path. Only Ambassador Zixtal, his silicon-based form unusually still, seemed to be studying the display with genuine interest. His deep-set photoreceptors focused on the pattern Jessica had highlighted, a subtle void in the typical quantum noise of space, spreading like cancer through the Orion Spur. Dr. McKenna. Zixtal's voice was grave, harmonic, suggesting concern. These patterns, they remind me of something I once saw in the ancient archives. Something about... Ambassador, Krithk interrupted, mandibles clicking rapidly. Surely you're not lending credence to these paranoid fantasies. Humanity has been spacefaring for barely 2 centuries. The Council has monitored that sector for millennia. Jessica fought back frustration. She'd expected skepticism, but this was beyond mere scientific caution. Members of the Council, please. The void is expanding. Our models suggest it's consuming quantum states themselves. If we don't act. Enough. Krithk's appendages clashed together in irritation. The Council will not be lectured on quantum mechanics by a species that still uses nuclear fission in some of its colonies. This session is... Wait. Zixtal's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. Dr. McKenna, that simulation you're running, does it correlate with the Mars ruins data? The chamber fell silent. Jessica allowed herself a small smile. Trust the silicon-based life forms to cut straight to the heart of the matter. Yes, Ambassador. The patterns match exactly with holographic recordings we discovered showing the fall of the previous galactic civilization. They called the phenomenon the Hungry Dark. Murmurs filled the chamber. The Mars ruins were a sore point for the Council. Humanity's discovery of advanced alien artifacts in their own solar system had forced the Council to accept Earth's membership application, despite concerns about their technological readiness. Those ruins are still largely undeciphered. Sub-Chancellor Ansel noted, her crystalline form vibrating with skepticism. Any correlation could be coincidental. The correlation is 99.97% accurate, Jessica countered, bringing up new data. And we've decoded more of the ruins than we've publicly announced. The previous civilization fell because their quantum-based technology actually attracted these entities. Their final warning was specific. What you consider advancement will be your doom. Krithk's translator couldn't quite capture the sound he made. Something between a laugh and a hiss. The session is concluded. The Council thanks Earth for its concern. We will investigate these claims at our leisure. As the chamber began to empty, Zixtal approached Jessica's podium. Dr. McKenna, he said quietly, I would very much like to see your complete data, privately. Jessica nodded, relief flooding through her. At least someone was listening. She just hoped it wouldn't be too late. Behind them, through the transparent ceiling, Centauri Prime's auroras continued their dance, their patterns growing imperceptibly more chaotic with each passing moment. The Mariana Deep Science Facility hummed with activity 2 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean. Jessica stared through the reinforced viewport at the darkness beyond, reminded uncomfortably of the voyage she'd observed in the Orion Spur. Behind her, Admiral James "Buck" Cooper's reflection paced across the curved transparasteel surface. "They're really not going to do anything." Buck's gravelly voice carried decades of command experience and barely contained frustration. "Even after you showed them the correlation with the Mars data." Jessica turned from the viewport, forcing herself to face the reality of their situation. The Admiral's weathered face looked older than his 50 years, the past week's sleepless nights evident in the dark circles under his eyes. "Worse than that, Krithk's faction is pushing to restrict our access to the ruins. They're calling it a security measure." "Damn politicians," Buck muttered, running a hand through his silver-streaked hair. "Show me the new findings again." Jessica activated the lab's holographic display. The Mars ruins flickered to life around them, a vast underground complex that had once been a research facility. The hologram focused on a recently decoded section, a massive chamber filled with what they now knew were quantum shield generators. "Here's where it gets interesting." Jessica highlighted a sequence of glyphs. They weren't just recording their history. They were running experiments, trying to understand what was hunting them. Buck stepped closer to the hologram, his military training evident in how his eyes immediately sought tactical implications. "And the entities, the hungry dark, they're drawn to quantum manipulation. The more advanced the technology, the more attractive it is to them." Jessica brought up another recording, showing ships similar to modern council vessels disappearing into tears in spacetime. The previous civilization's quantum shields, quantum computers, quantum drives. They might as well have been ringing a dinner bell. "But our tech?" "Exactly." Jessica allowed herself a grim smile. "Because Earth was isolated during the quantum revolution, we developed along different lines. Nuclear power, particle physics, graviton theory. The Council calls it primitive. I'm starting to think it might save us all." A soft chime interrupted them. Dr. Rivera, their xenorchaeology expert, rushed into the lab, his dark eyes wide with excitement. "You need to see this. Now." They followed him to the artifact containment chamber. Inside, behind layers of shielding, sat what looked like a simple black cube. But as Rivera adjusted the scanning frequency, complex patterns became visible within its structure. "It's a backup," Rivera explained, hands moving quickly over the controls. "A complete database of their defensive measures, including..." He paused, double-checking his readings, "including preliminary designs for weapons that could hurt these things." Buck leaned forward, suddenly intent. "Can we build them?" "Maybe." Rivera's expression was caught between excitement and concern. "But there's a catch. The weapons work by forcing the entities to collapse into normal spacetime. The power requirements are significant." "How significant?" Jessica asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. "The smallest would need the energy output of a small sun," Rivera admitted. "But we might have a workaround." Their quantum tech was incredibly efficient, but it attracted the entities. "If we use our primitive fusion reactors in parallel, we could brute force it," Buck finished, a predatory smile spreading across his face. "How many reactors would we need?" 50 per weapon. Minimum. Buck's smile didn't waver. "I know a few people who owe me favors. How quiet do we need to keep this?" Jessica thought of the Council's dismissal of Krithk's contempt. "We need to be invisible. If the Council finds out we're weaponizing the ruins technology, they'll shut us down faster than a reactor scram." Buck nodded. "Good thing the Mariana facility is officially a research station." He activated his secure comm. "This is Cooper. Implementation of Protocol Retrograde is now active. Authorization code terror prevails. Throughout the facility, hidden panels slid open, revealing military-grade manufacturing equipment. Jessica raised an eyebrow at Buck, who shrugged. "Always have a backup plan," he said, "especially when dealing with politicians who think they know everything." Outside the viewport, in the endless dark of the ocean depths, something glinted as massive shapes began to move. Humanity was preparing for war, whether the Council approved or not. The Stars Symphony was the pride of the Galactic Council's luxury fleet. 15,000 passengers from 30 different species enjoyed its quantum-stabilized artificial gravity, its reality-warping entertainment decks, and its famous synchronized nebula views. Now it was gone, leaving nothing but a spreading ripple in the quantum foam near the Pleiades. Jessica stood in the Council's emergency chamber, watching the Eternal Light, their most advanced battlecruiser, approach the Symphony's last known coordinates. The massive ship's quantum sensors probed the area, its AI systems processing data at speeds that made human computers look like abacuses. "No signs of conventional weapons," reported Captain Vigsnell, her crystalline form glowing with increasing agitation. "No debris field, no radiation signature, no." The transmission cut off. On the main display, the Eternal Light flickered once, like a candle in the wind, and vanished. The Council chamber erupted into chaos. Kurith's clicking reached a fever pitch as he accused humanity of sabotage. The Silicon delegates hummed in frequencies that made Jessica's teeth ache. Only Zixtol remained silent, his photoreceptors fixed on the exact spot where 2 ships and 17,000 lives had disappeared. Jessica's quantum pad buzzed. A message from Buck. "Dark Rising. Protocol retrograde active. Gate outie." She didn't hesitate. "Honored Council members," she interrupted the chaos, her voice carrying over the universal translators. "I need to show you something from the Mars ruins. Something we've kept classified until now." More human deceptions. Kurith's appendages clashed together. "We should arrest her for." "Show us." Zixtol's voice cut through the chamber. "Now." Jessica activated her pad. The chamber's holographic systems displayed a recording that Buck's team had discovered 3 days ago. The image quality was poor, degraded by millennia, but the scene was clear enough. A massive fleet, technology nearly identical to the Council's current ships, facing a darkness that moved wrong, that seemed to fold space itself around it. The ancient fleet lasted 4 seconds. "This recording is 17,000 years old," Jessica said into the stunned silence. "The civilization that made it was more advanced than we are now. They had quantum technology that makes ours look primitive. And they died anyway, because what they thought was advancement had actually made them vulnerable." "Impossible," Kurith whispered. But there was fear in his clicks now. "Our quantum shields are attracting them," Jessica finished. "Like moths to a flame. Or more accurately, like predators to prey." She brought up her quantum detection data, overlaying it with the Council's standard scans. "You can't see them because you're looking with quantum sensors. They exist in the spaces between quantum states. It's like trying to see your own retina." "And humanity." Sub-Chancellor Nanksel's crystalline form vibrated with suppressed emotion. "Your primitive technology is invisible to them." Jessica allowed herself a grim smile. Sometimes being backward has its advantages. Her pad buzzed again. Buck's message was brief. "Myra's facility DECODED final WARning. Get to Earth now." Members of the Council. Jessica straightened her uniform. "I have to leave. In exactly 47 minutes, something is going to happen that will change everything. You can either evacuate this station and get your people to safety, or you can keep arguing about whether humanity is advanced enough to have this conversation." She turned to leave, then paused. "Ambassador Zixtol, if you'd like to see what we've really been building under the Pacific Ocean, there's room on my shuttle." The silicon being rose smoothly. "Lead the way, Dr. McKenna." As they hurried through the station's corridors, Zixtol spoke quietly. You knew this was coming. You've been preparing. Yes. Why didn't you tell us everything from the start? Jessica thought of the massive shapes moving in the deep, of reactors humming to life in hidden facilities across Earth. Would you have believed us? Would you have accepted that humanity's primitive technology might be your only hope? Before Zixtal could answer, every quantum-based system in the station went dark. In the sudden emergency lighting, Jessica's pad displayed one final message from Buck. THEYRE here. The hungry dark had arrived, and humanity's real test was about to begin. Jessica's shuttle burned through Earth's atmosphere, its nuclear-powered engines pushing far beyond safety limits. Behind them, Centauri Prime's quantum network was going dark, system by system. In the passenger compartment, Zixtal interfaced directly with the shuttle's primitive computer systems, his silicon form processing data faster than any human could. Fascinating, he hummed. Your nuclear drives are completely invisible to quantum scans. It's like watching a ghost ship. That's not an accident, Jessica replied, checking their descent trajectory. Everything about this shuttle was designed to be quantum neutral. Even the coffee maker is mechanical. Their landing at the Mariana facility's surface dock was barely controlled chaos. Buck met them at the airlock, his uniform bearing fresh scorch marks. "Welcome to the Resistance, Ambassador," he said, leading them toward the command center. "Sorry about the mess. We just test-fired our first prototype." The facility had transformed. Where there had been research stations, now stood banks of military-grade targeting computers. The holographic displays showed real-time feeds from Earth's defensive grid, all running on pre-quantum technology. "By the Ancient Ones," Zixtal whispered, his photoreceptors taking in the scale of humanity's preparation. "You built all this in secret." "Not exactly secret," Buck grinned. "We just called it maintaining backward compatibility in the reports. Your quantum-focused bureaucrats never bothered to read them." A klaxon cut through their conversation. Dr. Rivera burst into the command center, his usual calm shattered. "They're manifesting. The hungry dark. They're taking physical form." The main display showed it happening. Across the galaxy, tiers in space-time were solidifying into shapes that hurt to look at. Beings that existed in 11 dimensions, forcing themselves partly into normal space. The Council's quantum-based sensors were going haywire, their AI systems either shutting down or going insane as they tried to process what they were seeing. "Now we know why the Mars civilization fell so quickly," Jessica said, watching the feed. "The Council's quantum tech isn't just attracting them, it's feeding them, making them stronger." "But why manifest now?" Zixtal asked. "Why not stay in their higher dimensions?" Because of this, Buck brought up a tactical display. The Council's defense minister just authorized the activation of their new quantum fortress network. 30,000 linked quantum processors, all running at maximum power. "They're ringing the dinner bell," Jessica realized, "and setting out a feast." The command center erupted into activity as reports flooded in. The hungry dark were moving with purpose now, targeting the largest concentrations of quantum technology. The Council's mighty defense fleet, pride of their civilization, was mobilizing to meet the threat. "We have to stop them." Zixtal's voice carried genuine fear. "That fleet's quantum drives will only make things worse." Already on it, Buck activated a secure channel. "All retrograde units, this is control. Implementation of Phase 1 is authorized. Launch the boys." Across Earth's oceans, hidden doors opened in the seafloor. Hundreds of devices, powered by good old-fashioned nuclear fusion, rose toward the surface. Each one carried a payload based on the Mars ruins designs, weapons that could force the hungry dark to collapse into normal spacetime. "Amazing," Zixtal observed the launches. "You've modified the ancient weapons, made them cruder, but more effective." Humanity's specialty, Jessica allowed herself a small smile. "We're very good at taking elegant solutions and making them work with brute force when we have to." A new alert sounded. The Council fleet had engaged the first manifestation of the Hungry Dark near the Arcturus system. Quantum-based weapons fired, and did absolutely nothing. God help them, Buck whispered, watching the feed. They have no idea what they're dealing with. The Hungry Dark seemed to pulse with new energy, growing stronger as they absorbed the quantum-based attacks. The Council fleet's formations broke as ships began to vanish, their quantum cores providing perfect target beacons for the interdimensional predators. How long until our weapons are in position? Jessica asked, unable to look away from the slaughter. 10 minutes, Buck checked the deployment schedule. Maybe less if we redline the drives. It'll have to be enough. She turned to Zixtal. Ambassador, I need you to send a message to anyone in the Council who'll still listen. Tell them to shut down their quantum tech. All of it. Right now. And if they don't. Jessica watched another Council squadron vanish into dimensional tears. Then we're about to find out if humanity's primitive solutions are enough to save a galaxy that thinks it's too advanced to need saving. Operation Final Light began with such confidence. 10,000 ships, the combined might of 600 civilizations, gathered near Barnard's star. Their quantum drives hummed in perfect harmony, their AI networks linked into a single vast consciousness. Ships that could reshape planets, redirect stars, and bend spacetime to their will. From her position aboard the TNS Defiant, one of 2 human observer vessels, Jessica watched the disaster unfold. All Council ships, break off. Break off now. Her warnings went unheeded as the fleet moved to engage the Hungry Dark. The void between stars rippled as 11-dimensional beings shifted into combat formation, if such terrestrial terms could even apply to them. 3 minutes to contact. Buck's voice crackled over their nuclear-powered comm system. His ship, the TNS Humanity's Pride, held position alongside the Defiant. For what it's worth, Ambassador, I'm sorry we couldn't convince them. Zixtal's crystalline form glittered under the emergency lighting. Pride, he said simply. We thought we were too advanced to fail. The Council fleet opened fire. Quantum-based weapons of unimaginable power lashed out, enough energy to vaporize solar systems, and passed straight through the Hungry Dark, like light through glass. For a moment, everything was still. Then the entities pulsed. Jessica's instruments recorded the next 3.7 seconds in excruciating detail. The Hungry Dark didn't just attack the fleet. They consumed it. Each ship's quantum core acted like a beacon, a perfect target for interdimensional predators. Reality itself seemed to fold around the Council vessels, pulling them into spaces between spaces. Energy readings are off the scale, Dr. Rivera reported from his station, voice shaking. They're not just feeding on the quantum cores. They're getting stronger with each ship they take. 9,998 ships vanished in less time than it takes to draw a breath. Only the Defiant and Humanity's Pride remained, their nuclear drives and graviton shields rendering them virtually invisible to the quantum-sensitive entities. My God, Buck's whisper carried over the comm. It's exactly like the Mars records. We're watching history repeat itself. The Hungry Dark seemed to pause, as if noticing the 2 human ships for the first time. A tendril of void reached toward them, then withdrew. Their primitive technology was like tasteless food to entities that fed on quantum states. New contacts. Rivera's shout snapped them back to action. The entities are moving. Multiple vectors. They're heading for populated systems. Jessica pulled up the tactical display, her heart sinking. The Hungry Dark were spreading out across the galaxy, drawn to the quantum technology that powered nearly every advanced civilization. Billions would die if they couldn't be stopped. Ambassador, she turned to Zixtal. I need you to do something impossible. I need you to convince the Council to shut down everything. Every quantum core, every processor, every shield. Everything that makes us advanced. The silicon being's photoreceptors flickered. They'll never agree. Even now, they're probably spinning up more quantum cores, thinking they just need more power, more advanced solutions. Then they'll die. Buck's voice was hard. Just like the Mars civilization died. Just like everyone dies when they forget that newer doesn't always mean better. Jessica's console lit up with priority alerts. The hungry dark had reached their first populated system. On the displays, they watched quantum-powered cities go dark. Defense grids failed. Space stations winked out of existence. "We have to do something," Rivera pleaded. "We are." Jessica straightened her uniform. "Signal Earth. Tell them to launch the entire retrograde fleet. Every ship, every weapon. And get me a channel to whatever's left of the Council. They need to see this." "See what?" Zixtal asked. "What happens when humanity stops trying to be advanced and starts being effective?" She turned to the tactical display. "Plot course for the Ta City system. If we're right about the Mars ruins weapons, we might have one chance to turn this around." As the two human ships engaged their nuclear drives, Jessica thought about the Council's dismissal of primitive technology, about how humanity's isolation had forced them to develop differently, about how sometimes survival means being willing to take a step backward before you can move forward. They had one chance to save the galaxy. Time to show the Council why humanity never forgot how to fight dirty. The emergency Council session was held in a bunker deep beneath Europa's ice, powered by hydrothermal generators. No quantum technology allowed. The handful of surviving Council members watched in stunned silence as Jessica and Buck presented humanity's last hope. Project Retrograde. 3,000 ships. Buck's hologram flickered slightly. They were using old-style projection tech, all powered by fusion drives. Particle accelerator weapons modified based on the Mars ruin specs. Graviton shields that operate outside quantum parameters. Obsolete technology. Krith's clicking was subdued now, his previous arrogance shattered by the loss of the fleet. "You expect to fight 11-dimensional beings with fusion bombs and particle beams." "No," Jessica stepped forward. "We expect to fight them with technology they can't eat. Every quantum-based weapon you've fired has made them stronger. Our primitive tech, they can barely detect it." The bunker's displays showed real-time footage of the hungry dark consuming another quantum-powered system. The entities had grown enormous, glutted on the energy of thousands of ships and stations. "Watch this," Buck keyed a command. The display shifted to a test firing from 3 days ago. A human ship, looking absurdly small and crude next to the Council's sleek vessels, approached one of the smaller entities. It fired a modified particle beam, the weapon's energy carefully tuned to force quantum collapse. The entity recoiled. "That's impossible." Sub-Chancellor Anxel's crystalline form vibrated with shock. "Nothing has even touched them before." "Exactly." Jessica highlighted the relevant data. "Your quantum weapons exist in the same dimensional spaces they do. Ours don't. We're hitting them from angles they don't expect, with energy they can't process. And this is why you maintain such basic technology." Zixtal asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Partially," Buck admitted, "but mostly because humanity's learned the hard way that putting all your eggs in one basket is a good way to lose all your eggs. We kept the old tech running, kept improving it in parallel with quantum development, called it redundancy in the reports." A new alert cut through the conversation. The hungry dark had reached Centauri Prime, the Council's capital. Its quantum-powered defenses lasted seconds. "We're out of time." Jessica faced the Council. "You have a choice. You can keep trying to fight this with advanced technology, keep feeding them until there's nothing left, or you can swallow your pride and let humanity's primitive fleet take point. And if we agree?" Krith's translator barely caught his whispered clicks. "What do you need from us?" "Shut it all down." Buck's voice was firm. "Every quantum core, every processor, every ship. Return to backup systems. I know you have them, even if you pretend they're just for emergencies. The economic damage," Anxel began, "will be less than extinction." Jessica cut in. "We need you to go dark. All of you. Make the entities hungry, make them hunt, And when they're desperate enough, we spring the trap, Buck finished. The council chamber erupted in argument, but Jessica could see the shift in their eyes, in their postures, in the way their translators rendered their words. Fear had finally overcome pride. Time to vote, Zixtal announced. All in favor of authorizing Project Retrograde and implementing a galaxy-wide quantum shutdown. The vote was unanimous. Admiral Cooper, Krithk's voice carried the weight of formal authority. The Council hereby grants you emergency command of all remaining military forces. May your primitive technology prove as effective as you claim. Buck's hologram smiled grimly. Oh, it's not just the technology, Counselor. Humanity's been practicing fighting against overwhelming odds since we first picked up sticks and stones. We're about to show you why sometimes the old ways are the best ways. As the Council dispersed to implement the shutdown, Jessica caught Zixtal studying her. Question, Ambassador. Just an observation. The silicon beam's photoreceptors glowed softly. You knew this would happen. You built an entire secret fleet, waiting for the day when all our advanced technology would fail us. Not secret, Jessica corrected. Just overlooked. Sometimes the best place to hide something is in plain sight, labeled obsolete. Above them, through Europa's ice, the void between stars grew darker as the hungry dark searched for their next meal. But this time, humanity was ready. Sometimes the best way to fight monsters isn't with bigger weapons, but with weapons so simple they never see them coming. The TNS Humanity's pride slipped through normal space like a shark through dark water. No quantum wake, no dimensional distortion, just the clean thrust of fusion engines and the subtle ripple of graviton shields. Behind it, the retrograde fleet moved in precise formation. 3,000 ships that looked like relics next to the Council's fallen armada. Status report. Buck stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display as Jessica coordinated from Europa Command. Quantum shutdown at 97% across populated systems, his XO reported. The entities are starting to show signs of, well, sir, they appear to be getting hungry. The display showed it clearly. The hungry dark were becoming more erratic, their 11-dimensional forms twisting as they searched for quantum energy sources that were no longer there. Some had begun to shrink, their bloated forms contracting without constant feeding. Like taking candy from a baby, Buck mused. If the baby was a cosmos-spanning horror that could eat reality. Contact. Tactical lit up. Entity approaching, bearing 037. It's a big one. The thing that appeared before them defied description. Reality bent around it, space-time folding like paper in an origami master's hands. But there was something different about its movement, something desperate. All ships, execute pattern Delta, Buck ordered. Remember your training. These things might not like our technology, but they can still tear us apart if we let them. The retrograde fleet split into pre-planned formations. Ships that would have been laughed at in any council military review began their deadly dance. Particle accelerators powered up, their energy signatures carefully tuned to frequencies derived from the Mars ruins. The entity struck first, a tendril of void reaching for the nearest ship. But without quantum energy to guide it, the attack was clumsy, almost blind. The ship, TNS Thermopylae, rolled gracefully aside and fired. The particle beam struck home. The entity recoiled, its form distorting as energy it couldn't absorb or process tore through it. More ships opened fire, their crude but devastating weapons forcing quantum collapse in carefully calculated patterns. By the Ancient Ones, Zixtal's voice came over the command channel from Europa. They're actually hurting it. Pattern holding, Tactical reported. Entity showing signs of dimensional instability. It's trying to retreat. Not this time. Buck's voice was steel. All ships, execute maneuver Thermopylae. Close the net. The human fleet moved with practiced precision, surrounding the wounded entity. More particle beams struck home, each one carefully calibrated to a different frequency. The entity thrashed, its form beginning to collapse into normal spacetime. Energy spike. The warning came too late. The entity lashed out in its death throes. The TNS Sparta vanished, torn apart by forces that existed between dimensions. 2 more ships suffered heavy damage before the monster finally collapsed, its 11-dimensional form compressed into 3-dimensional space. Where it had been, a small dark mass remained, like a black hole made of quantum static. First kill confirmed. Buck allowed himself a small smile. Cost us 3 ships. Better odds than the Council fleet got. Admiral, Jessica's voice crackled over the comm. We're tracking 5 more entities moving toward your position. They felt that death. They know we can hurt them now. Good. Buck studied the tactical display. Let them come. Humanity's been the underdog so many times. We've gotten pretty good at finding soft spots in bigger opponents. The bridge crew tensed as new contacts appeared. The Hungry Dark were coming, drawn by the death of their fellow entity. But this time they faced an enemy they couldn't simply consume, an enemy whose primitive technology hit them from angles they couldn't defend against. All ships, Buck's voice carried across the fleet. Remember your history. Remember David and Goliath. Remember the 300 Spartans. Throughout human history, we faced enemies that should have crushed us. Should have. But humanity's got a funny habit of doing the impossible when our backs are against the wall. The entities drew closer, their forms twisting with alien hunger and rage. Battle stations, Buck ordered. Let's show these quantum horrors why humanity never threw away our stone axes even after we built nuclear bombs. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways to kill monsters. The battle for humanity's primitive future was about to begin. The Tav Ceti Quantum Processing Center hung in space like a dying star, its massive quantum cores pulsing with irresistible energy. Around it, the last remnants of the retrograde fleet held position, their nuclear drives humming at minimal power. They're coming. Jessica's voice was tense over the comm. From her position in Europa Command, she watched the tactical display as dozens of hungry dark entities converged on their position. Are you sure about this, Buck? Not even slightly. Buck stood on the Pride's bridge, watching the void between stars grow darker. But sometimes the best trap is the one that's too obvious to believe. The plan was insane. They'd reactivated the largest quantum installation in known space, making it pulse like a beacon. The Hungry Dark, weakened by the galaxy-wide quantum shutdown, wouldn't be able to resist such a feast. Energy signatures at maximum, Dr. Rivera reported from his station. They can probably sense this from 3 sectors away. That's the idea. Buck checked the tactical display one last time. The human fleet was arranged in a complex 3-dimensional pattern around the processing center, their positions calculated down to the meter. Status on the gravity bombs. Armed and ready. All ships report fusion packages at optimal temperature. The first entity appeared, its 11-dimensional form twisting spacetime into impossible shapes. Then another, and another. The Hungry Dark gathered around the quantum center like moths drawn to a flame. Wait for it. Buck's voice was steady. Let them commit. More entities arrived, their forms growing as they prepared to feed. The quantum energy was too tempting, too perfect to resist. They began to merge, combining into a single vast consciousness of void and hunger. Now, Buck's order cracked across the comm. Execute Protocol Omega. 3,000 fusion bombs detonated simultaneously, their energy carefully modulated to interact with the graviton fields generated by each ship. The blast waves combined, amplified by the quantum center's own fields, creating a cascade effect that the Mars ruins had predicted but never achieved. Space itself seemed to scream. The Hungry Dark, caught in the midst of feeding, found themselves trapped as dimensional space began to collapse. The human fleet's graviton shields, crude but effective, created a boundary they couldn't escape through. Containment holding. Tactical reported. Voice strained. Entities attempting to shift dimensions. Unsuccessful. They're being forced into normal spacetime. The void between stars turned solid, The many-dimensional horrors compressed into something that could exist in only 3 dimensions. The quantum center's energy, instead of feeding them, became a trap, holding them in place as reality reasserted itself. "All ships, execute final attack pattern," Buck ordered. "Hit them with everything we have." Particle accelerators fired from every angle, their crude but devastating beams striking the now vulnerable entities. Without their higher dimensional existence to protect them, the hungry dark began to break apart. Energy spike. Rivera's warning came just in time. They're trying something. The compressed entities made one final desperate attempt to break free. A pulse of pure quantum energy erupted from their dying forms. Ships tumbled, their graviton shields flaring as they struggled to compensate. The TNS Humanity's pride took the worst of it. Buck's bridge sparked and shuddered as systems overloaded. "Status," he demanded. "Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. Fusion core stable but graviton shields failing. We need to withdraw." "Negative." Buck gripped his command chair. "Hold position. If that containment field breaks, we lose everything." Through burning eyes, he watched as the entities made their final transformation. The space they occupied collapsed in on itself, crushing 11 dimensions into 3, turning cosmic horrors into something that could finally, mercifully, die. The void between stars grew quiet. All entities neutralized, Tactical reported, disbelief clear in their voice. "I repeat, all entities neutralized. It's over." In the sudden silence, Buck looked at his battered bridge, at the faces of his crew. Human faces that had just helped save a galaxy of beings who had called them primitive. He keyed his comm. "Europa Command, this is Cooper. Mission accomplished. Tell the Council they can power up their quantum tech again, but maybe suggest they keep some fusion reactors around, just in case." Jessica's laugh carried equal parts relief and exhaustion. "Copy that, Admiral. Welcome to the future, where humanity's past just saved everyone's present." Sometimes, Buck thought, watching his crew celebrate, the best way forward is to remember where you came from.